Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Green Film Fest San Francisco 2022. I'm Jason Wollos. I am one of the programmers here at SF Indie Fest. Um, Today we have the Q&A for the program Low Relief for High Water, and we are lucky enough to have some of the filmmakers here with us from different parts of the world. Hey, filmmakers, thanks for joining us.
Hey there.
Hey, everybody.
Good to have you here. Hey, quickly, participants, can you just tell me your name, where you're calling in from for our audiences, and what film you are associated with? Mika, we'll start with you.
Okay, sure. I'm Micah Fink. I'm based in New Jersey, in Glen Ridge, New Jersey, and I produced and directed a short film called Low Relief for High Water, which I'm happy to tell you more about.
Great. And next, who would like to go next? Because I know Farhan and Tara are together.
Go
Tara,
ahead.
how about you?
Okay, sure. Good morning, Tara Marsden, and my Gitxsan name is Nachgink. I am from Gitniau, and we are a part of the film called Honey Talk, and just really honored to be included in the festival. And I am in New Hazelton, British Columbia, in Gitxsan territory, which is in what is known as Canada in the northwest part.
Thank you.
So I'm Farhan Medley. I work with Tara on that same film. I was the one who filmed and edited it, basically, and put it together. So I'm the filmmaker, and I'm now in Cranbrook, British Columbia, where I'm running an Indigenous film program. So but I'm from Vancouver, so this is my second stop out of 4.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for being here, guys, and congratulations for making your movie. Not only getting into our film festival, but completing your movie because I know how difficult it is to make movies. So well done. Where did the inspiration for these films come from? What was the spark? Mika, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, when you see the film, when everybody sees the film, it's really the story of the creation of a work of art, specifically relating to climate change. I've done a lot of work over the years on climate change. I worked with Al Gore's Climate Reality Project for 4 years and produced films all over the world, looking at impacts and solutions. And we find ourselves at a very frustrating moment in in sort of the history of the world, I think, but particularly relating to climate change, where there's such an urgent and pressing problem that's getting closer and closer, and yet the majority of the population still seems to be pretty blasé. And so, instead of focusing on a scientist or an engineer or a victim of climate change, working with the Climate Museum, which is based in New York City, we decided to focus on an artist making a very sort of intimate and personal response to climate change. So the film really sort of tracks the artist, Gabriela Salazar, who's a wonderful installation artist, as she conceives of and then creates this installation piece. At the time, we thought it was going to be a really quick, 2-month project. And of course, the event was supposed to happen early in the spring of 2020. And so just after she had finished actually sort of building the project, then COVID hit. And in some ways, the year and a half separation between making the work and then actually creating the installation and then performing. She's also a performance artist, and part of the work, as you'll see, involves tearing apart the work and handing it out. Became a meditation on how we respond to these bigger crises that really connect and unify and touch us all, and yet are such a challenge for us to think about as a species. And I think when you even watch the film, I think the parallels between COVID and climate change really become very, very profound. And in the course of it, you actually see her newborn child growing up. So there are a lot of sort of threads that emerge through it, but really it's an attempt to focus the spotlight on an individual, on a creative artist, on somebody really trying to respond to forces that are much larger, and in doing so create something that touches many, many people, as you'll see in the film, as the work of art is performed. So
Before I ask the next filmmakers the same question, how was the response from the public I mean, you show it in the movie, but and it seemed, with the COVID and the rainy day and stuff like that, but it seemed like the public was interactive.
Yeah, so part of the spirit of the Climate Museum, which sort of commissioned the artist and the artwork, was to create a public engagement moment where art exists in a public sphere, in a public space. So we did it, or she did it in Washington Square Park, which is one of the largest parks in New York City. And the audience was really people just walking through. And people from all over the world came through and were actually given physically a piece of the sculpture that she had torn off her work. And it created a really interesting dynamic of engaging people with the reality of what this sense of change means to somebody. And it became an opportunity for conversation as well. So I think people really, some people just walked away, some people really engaged and stayed, other people engaged in very long, sort of active conversations about themselves and their lives and change and the meaning of climate change. So I think it was sort of this idea of handing off a piece of a work of art to strangers and making them responsible for throwing it away or preserving it. It's about imbuing meaning in a changing world, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and one of the things I like that you said, because one of the takeaways I'm getting from all the Q&As from other filmmakers in this film festival is we need more conversations over these topics, and the fact that performance art, if you will, created conversation is an excellent result. So let's talk to the other filmmakers. What was your spark, your start, your inspiration for your film?
Tara, you can take that one.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so for our nation, for the Gitniao, we have some critical spawning habitat for salmon, which was under direct threat from some mineral exploration, so mining activity. And it's interesting to hear the other filmmaker talk about climate change and those impacts and ways to address it. And so for this particular area that Farhan did extensive filming in, we have two creeks that are not glacier fed, they're snowpack fed, and so they are being heavily affected by climate change with less snow in the winter, more rain in the winter. And then we have this other creek, which was not historically salmon spawning habitat, but is actually being much more productive with climate change because it's glacier fed. So glaciers are receding in our territory, and that is creating new habitat in the interim, in this sort of middle period. And then we have these other more historic spawning areas, which are protected, but are suffering because of climate change. We needed to get our voices out there. We needed to have public awareness. This is an area of the world that's remote. It is not well populated by non-Indigenous people. And so we needed to get the message out about climate change and how there's adaptation that's happening, but we need to protect those new areas as new information, new science is becoming available, and really trying to support the ongoing food security for our people. So salmon is a staple of our diet and is really the bedrock of our culture. And so Farhan has graciously joined us in partnership and documented a ton of the territory and the story of who we are and why we're trying to protect the area.
So Farhan, let me bring you in. How did you guys begin your collaboration?
Well, I'd been working on some other projects with Gitniao before, and I was working originally with them to use drones for environmental survey work to basically for habitat assessment for salmon and other species there. And then they have an active guardians program, which means that they have there are people on their territory managing and monitoring all of the habitat and the activities there and reporting them back to the reporting those activities back to the chief, so they're aware of everything on their territory because it's their territory. And also doing a lot of conservation restoration work because of the logging that's happened there and all of the other industrial activity. So there's collapsed culverts, in fact, impacting salmon. There's climate change that's drying upstream, so they're breaking beaver dams at times to try to create flow and help, just manually helping this ecosystem survive and be productive. And then from there, we did a promo video for the Guardians program to help them with funding, et cetera, all their needs. And And then Joel and Tara approached me, I think, and to help tell that story. And I focus on trying to bring awareness to the plight of Indigenous people here. And I deeply care about that territory. And so we have this connection. And so they chose me to work with them. And yeah, it started from there.
And worthwhile projects to bring awareness to the masses. One of the good things about green films or environmental films is, you're getting the message out there. What do you hope, Ferran, I'll stay on you. What do you hope people get from watching your movie? Besides entertainment, which very beautifully shot, edited, well made. Both these films, entertainment value as far as how well made they are fantastic. So congratulations on that. But what do you hope audiences get from them?
From my side, like in Joel, who has also brought me on, he's a wing chief in Wilp Village. We are trying to also connect the impacts of climate change to industrialization and colonization. The reason these issues are happening around the world is because Indigenous people have been pulled off their land. They're the only people who have lived sustainably in harmony with nature. And we've moved away from that. And in the process, colonization has pushed them down. People need to connect those dots, and we attempt to do that in the film. So we do take these segues back and recreate some of the history and explain some of the personal, painful stories, even touching on the issues of residential schools, which you may have heard about. They have, they were basically, we call them colonial concentration camps, where children were taken away, and then they were they were brainwashed to forget their culture, and there was systemic abuse within that system. Gitna'ya people suffered those abuses, as well as all Indigenous people in Canada. So we need to bring these stories to light and connect the dots. So I'm hoping that's also part of it, is understanding the human aspect, why, how they're connected to their land, and what they've had to endure just to be on their land and just be who they are.
Yes, indeed. Tara, also same question. What you hope audiences pull from this?
Yeah, I hope that people can learn more about climate change and how resilient, on the one hand, species like salmon are, and on the other hand, how much we need to do, and in specific areas, and then globally what can be done. And so it's this example of this really close to home for us, climate change impact. And I think people feel so powerless dealing with climate change, but if everybody in the world feels powerless, guess what? When everybody does something different, that's power, right? And so it's really providing people, I think, the inspiration, hopefully, as well as some urgency to act on climate change, whatever that looks like in your life and in your world.
Right on. Yeah. Just take action, small steps in your own local area, in your immediate area. And Micah, your film, that is what I got from your film, but what were you hoping audiences pull from your film? I got take action, go, do something, make art.
Yeah, I really relate to what Tara is saying. The challenge that we're all facing is so large and so overwhelming, and it feels like people have become a little impenetrable to facts. That that the facts are out there, the facts are obvious. People debate them, but not in a meaningful way anymore, I think. And so the question really becomes one of agency, which is, what can you do? What can we do? And, to me, what Gabrielle is doing in the film is a very personal way of touching a lot of people on an emotional level and on a very human level, and through art and through creativity. I think we have to start being creative ourselves in terms of how we can try to engage people, because everybody has this very profound stake in what's going to happen, particularly if you have kids or if you think about the future at all, or other future generations. There's this sort of almost cliche, Iroquois idea of looking 7 generations ahead. And now, I'm starting to see people in a very serious way beyond the Native American community thinking about the long term. What happens to our species, if we really screw things up in the next 50 years? What are we doing to all those people who have yet to be born and who were yet to come, and how fair is that? So, I mean, I think we have to find creative ways to help people to understand the stakes, because it's really not just about a small change in your life, or moving out of a house, or a shoreline rising, or the crops change. All these things are true and they're all factual and it's all happening. But I think if people understood this, the really I think it's a moral argument ultimately, that, what we're doing really has profound ripples through time. And that's the danger, and that's the damage, apart from the refugees and, all the larger forces that we're starting to see shifting around us, are very much in the moment. But, how do you help people to get a bigger understanding? I think art can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has this project influenced you at all? Like, after many environmental filmmakers make a project, they've actually become more knowledgeable. They change a habit or they change a routine. How has this project, or even just making movies, documentaries, changed you towards being greener, if you will? Micah, has this changed you at all? Do you look at art differently, or do you recycle more? Do you,
Honestly, I guess, I lived with this film for almost 2 years, I think, during COVID. So it's been a very thought-provoking period of time to be making a movie. We're eating less meat. I mean, in a very concrete way. I think my family, we've decided every other day we're not going to eat meat if we can. We're trying that. I think if I
That's
can
great.
be maybe a little sort of, I don't want to say cynical, but a little, I think what we do as individuals is important, but really what we have to do is shift institutions at this point. It doesn't matter so much in the grand scheme of things, whether you recycle or whether you do this or you do that. It's important on a personal ethical level, and I think it shapes how you look at the world. But really, institutionally, we need to stop using fossil fuels. I mean, just that is what has to happen. And I read something that said that the whole idea that you should recycle is itself an industry piece of counterspin. By placing the responsibility on each individual, we're not looking at social responsibility or corporate responsibility, that it's a way of spinning people's attention towards the particular rather than the general. And so when I read that, that really resonated for me. And I think that we all have to work towards larger action. So
I agree. I'm sorry to interrupt, but before I forget the term, one term I've learned, a word I've heard for the first time in this festival, is called greenwashing.
right.
And that's the spin you're talking about. And I agree with you. Yeah, recycling is used that way by companies that maybe aren't really that green or, eco-friendly. And I just also was cued to remember your film, Farhan and Tara. Is that the one where the glaciers are melting and now companies are thinking about mining the underbelly and the minerals that are underneath where the glaciers used to be? Which that was bothersome to me. Tell me more about that, and how maybe you guys are changed after working on your project.
Tara, I'll let you take that.
Yeah, I think that it is one of these horrors that, the people that are celebrating climate change are mining companies. It's just horrific, on a basic level, I think. And so there is a lot of hype and speculation, and in British Columbia, we don't have a lot of mine development companies. We have junior exploration companies. So the whole industry is geared around creating hype around new areas open for exploration. And so it is this really sort of tragic, awful story that needed to be told. And so Farhan really cued in on that, on the history of British Columbia colonization, free entry, which is like, any land that isn't in a park is free for exploration in BC, which is really not the case in many other jurisdictions. But I think what Farhan maybe could answer on that is that people like you said, Micah, are so immune to facts, are so immune to just common sense and rational arguments now, that emotion has to be a part of it. And I was really resistant to that. I just wanted to tell the story, facts, science, like boom, boom, boom. And Farhan really convinced me that like there has to be a human element to this. And so I don't know, Farhan, if you wanted to share your perspective on how you approached it.
I think thanks for, and I think that it is challenging to go there, and it's because it was Joel actually was a really big part of that. He was adamant that that we take it to that to connect those dots. And I think it is harder for me as a non-Indigenous person to your territory, like to really step into that. But I can kind of put on my, yeah, it's a tough question, Tara. Like in a sense that like I think we need to see that there are people, real people being impacted, and that the Gitniao people are like deeply connected with their territory. This isn't just about the value of an ecosystem. This is about sustaining a people, about children, and about making sure that you're here. Like, and that is something that we have to fight tooth and nail to stand with Gitniao to protect. Like, enough is enough. What's happened in so-called Canada. People like myself who've come from a refugee family, all people need to stand together to support human rights for Indigenous people here. And so connecting those dots, unfortunately, we have to like tell a human story, because that has been, the system has been trying to take that away from Indigenous people, and we have to make people human again.
Yeah. Well, and I think just the machinery of consumerism has taken away the human element, and that's what we need to get back to in general, as opposed to just being consumers or purchasers, right? And we need to tie in the humanity, the human level to our food, our ecosystems, our habitats, all that stuff. And all you guys have started to do that with your films. Let's uplift this just a little bit. Any messages of hope from what you have worked on, and any uplifting kind of moments from making your projects or other projects related to the environment? Faran, do you want to continue?
Well, sometimes, and in this case, I was asked to produce a film with Gitniao, and but the other important aspect, and I'd say of my life, is to teach Indigenous people filmmaking, and that's what I'm doing here in Cranbrook. So I'm gonna in 1 month train 100 people to produce their own films from beginning to end, to be self-sufficient filmmakers.
Wow.
Leave behind the cameras they need to do that work. We've set up a system where they are qualified for really great grants to continue that work, and they'll have official certifications and ongoing mentorship. So for me, I'm honored and privileged to be able to tell and be a conduit for these positive stories, or stories that need to be told. But I want to make sure that they have those capacities, especially the young people that really feel isolated in some of the reserves and the social situations they're living in because of the impacts of colonization and intergenerational trauma. So that's my duty.
What's the name of that program, if we want to learn more about it?
It's called the Empowered Filmmaker Masterclass. It's empoweredfilmmaker.com.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Tara, how about you? Any inspiring, uplifting moments from your
Yeah,
project?
well, it's been a little while since the film was released, and it's been really effective. So I'm happy to share that we have interim operational protection of this area. And so we're working actively with the provincial government to secure longer term protection through colonial laws. We've already established it as an Indigenous protected area in our own IOC, which is our own law. So we had a celebration and a ceremony where we debuted the film out in the territory in the middle of wilderness, and with no big fanfare from folks outside of our circle, but people who really mattered were there, and that was really exciting, and it really gave us the inspiration and the good feelings to continue this hard fight. But the government is listening. The film helps because we have a government representative in the film, so it's really kind of shining the spotlight on their inaction and their need to protect critical areas like this. So film is a hugely powerful tool for protecting amazing spaces like in our territory.
Fantastic. That would have been fun to have been at that screening.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Ika, any
Sure. I mean, I think on a lot of levels, frankly, this conversation in itself, and the fact that you are premiering this film at the San Francisco Green Film Festival is part of what gives me hope, is that there is an audience and there is a community of people who care enough to want to engage in these conversations and look at these films and be inspired perhaps by the figures within the films. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've come to the conclusion that, you know, you really can change how people look at the world through film. And that's a really unique power that we're all sort of involved in. So I think each act of filmmaking is in itself an act of hope, because really we're trying to communicate. And, you know, the fact that it's succeeding, that it's going to film festivals, that it's being seen in the world, you know, to me, that's a real sign of encouragement, because it means that the messages are getting out. And I think that's the beginning of this process.
Yeah.
You know, other projects, you know, I'm actually just starting a new project on teen suicide. I don't know if that's an issue up where you guys are, but certainly it is down here. And, you know, I think, you know, the more collaborative work that we can do to support each other, I think that's also part of what keeps us all going. So,
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, I would like to kind of conclude very soon on that note, because you know, film does have that power to bring us together and take action and be aware. And all your movies are helping us save the planet, I believe. So thank you for making your movies. Any parting words any of you want to add before we sign off that I may not have asked you?
I hope your film festival goes on for another 1,000 years.
Thank you. Well said. Me too. Well, hey, you guys, congratulations on your films. Thank you for making your films and helping us protect our globe, our planet. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Okay, thank you so much.
So
for having
much.
us.
Nice to meet
Best
you.
of luck to you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.